Today is 57 of our cold exposure training, the beginning of the 9th week. The temperature is 69, it feels like 69. You know, it's warm. Yeah, my water staying cold. Following our discussion on dopamine, this week we want to be talking about the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is a branch of the autonomic nervous system that triggers our body's fight or flight response to stress or perceived danger. Now, the main hormones released are norepinephrine, also called noradrenaline, and epinephrine, also called adrenaline. But dopamine does play a supporting role. And even though dopamine is a cold-release hormone, it does help fine-tune the sympathetic activity, including increasing alertness and motivation, among helping with other things. Cold exposure ignites the sympathetic nervous system by the cold shock response. It happens almost immediately in 1 to 3 seconds with full immersion. How our body responds is critical for immediate survival in life-threatening situations. So having a well-tuned sympathetic nervous system is beneficial. All right, later. The temperature is 67 and it feels like 67. When you enter the water, what I like to call the entrance, the body perceives it as a sudden stressor, triggering the cold shock response. The SNS, sympathetic nervous system, is activated. You receive a rapid increase in heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing, like an involuntary gasping for breath and hyperventilation. Norepinephrine or noradrenaline, epinephrine, adrenaline, and dopamine all surge. Blood vessels in the skin and the limbs constrict to preserve your core heat. The airways are dilated for better breathing, and the pupils are widened for sharper vision. Blood flow is redirected to the muscles and brain to release stored energy like glucose in the liver. It slows non-essential processes like digestion and reduces gut independence. This is to conserve energy for more immediate needs. All right, till tomorrow. About 10 minutes. I think it's appropriate to go 10 minutes when the water is above 60 Fahrenheit. After cold plunge, within minutes to hours, the body adapts and shifts toward recovery. Now, the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system, becomes more dominant to counteract the stress and restore homeostasis. It's the self-regulating process in which our biological systems maintain a stable internal environment. Till tomorrow. The temperature is 77. We're supposed to be getting some colder weather the next few days. 66 can be effective depending on the duration. And from the way my body feel, 66 ain't something I'm accustomed to at the moment. Back on the sympathetic nervous system. Now the initial sympathetic nervous system boost, followed by the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system rebound, can reset the nervous system, improve your mood, reduce anxiety, and enhance emotional regulation. The initial SNS spike can be risky for people with heart conditions because of the strain on the cardiovascular system. Benefits come with gradual exposure and proper technique. Now, the evidence varies in strength, with some effects based on personal experience or small studies. All right, till tomorrow. The temperature is 48, but it feels like 44. The water is 61.8, but it should be colder. But this water sitting here yesterday in the 80s, it made it warmer than it would if it was sitting in temperatures of 40s and 50s. So I did put clean water in here. So I wish I would have realized that yesterday. I would have done it yesterday. It would have been probably in the 50s, probably about 50, mid 50s it would have been Fahrenheit. But 61.8 is still good. All right, let's get it. Regular or repeated cold exposure can blunt the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, over response time. And some people may think that's not too good, is it? Well, this can lead to lower sympathetic activation during stressor situations and shift toward greater PNS, parasympathetic nervous system activity. And we know that the sympathetic nervous system triggers that fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system triggers the rest and digest response. Over a period of time, the body is being trained to manage stress in difficult situations. By forcing a fight or flight response via cold plunge in a safe environment, you're training your brain to handle stress. And we're training it more effectively by reducing our reactivity to stressors. Oh. 10 minutes. All right, till tomorrow. The temperature is 59 and it feels like 59. But back on the topic of whether blunting the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, was a bad thing, is actually considered a positive adaptation rather than a problem. The cold shock becomes less intense and the cardiovascular response is dampened over time. This can last for months, even after you reduce your frequency. A blunted response reduces unnecessary physiological strain during non-life-threatening cold, while preserving adaptive mechanisms like brown fat activation, which helps burn calories. Because we deal with so much stress in our everyday life, I look at cold plunge as being the necessary stressor activator. With so much going on in the world, it's necessary that we activate that inner person that can do all things. All right, till tomorrow. This is our 63rd day, 9 weeks doing cold plunge. It's a beautiful Friday. To end the week on our discussion with the sympathetic nervous system, without reliable SNS function, the body would struggle to respond to emergencies, leading to inadequate performance or heightened vulnerability. A healthy SNS is needed for overall energy management, for daily activities or exercise. A healthy SNS promotes long-term resilience and prevents disease by avoiding chronic dysregulation. The SNS should be responsive, but able to quiet down promptly rather than staying overactive from the stressors of modern life. Controlled stressors are a key area in building and training this flexibility. As a man in his early 40s, I understand that heart disease is the #1 killer in the world. And cold plunge is a great way for me to build and train this cardiovascular system. Stress is not going away, but it matters how we deal with them every day. Later.